Greetings and welcome. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Corps, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. Just one point of view out of 10,000, right? The word Pilates is the mother of 10,000 things, 10,000 points of view. And this broadcast is about a point of view of Pilates and a point of view of biomechanics. Insofar as CT is core new tension, and that's a biomechanical thing, and MMP is a point of view of Pilates, among which there are many. See the distinction? And to me, those are the two takeaways from whatever you absorb from me and my profession, of my profession. What else you got? So where's the drink here? There's just two things on the list today. One is what else you got, and the other one is Pilates pursues symmetry. And the original title for number one, instead of what else you got, started out as just a statement that core new tension is real. Okay. Think whatever you want of me or my points of view or this or that, but know that from this point of view, oppositional rotation between axes is evolutionarily, just de facto in the body, in situ, the way the body moves through, engages itself to move through space. And I would say, in so doing, reflects the ideal nature of the space we live in by interacting with oppositional rotation between axes. Has an inherent degree of stability in it, an inherent degree of drawing uniform usage of the body into place. All of it. Makes alignment sensational. So, what was my core new tension is real. And it's sensational. Now, maybe not to everybody and right away, but that's the role of being a Pilates instructor. For me, is knowing that, to get there, to develop the body uniformly, like contrology develops the body uniformly, to do that, to me, from this point of view, uniform engagement of the musculature is what you're after. And the way you get there is through oppositional rotation between axes. The axes in the body that the body has capability of creating rotational dynamic in. And in so engaging that tension, we move towards the uniform development we're after. Developing uniformly. We're after doing it in the moment of the doing uniformly. And to do that, from this point of view, core new tension is implicit in that state of being in the effort. Meaning to be uniformly engaged requires uniform tension. And to get uniform tension requires core new tension, because it's not just, and that takes me to number one, the title, which is, what else you got? What else you got that can do that? What else you got that delivers that? And sensationally, no less. two other short comments on this subject is, ignore the physics at your own risk. So I keep reminding myself, you're listening to this, trying to learn what I think it takes to survive as a Pilates instructor. That's the impetus behind the broadcast. And it's all about a theory that there's an ideal within Joe's original work, right from his book. And that theory encompasses biology and, more importantly, the physics in which the interaction happens. To understand what you're doing as an instructor, reaching for uniform engagement, reaching for whole body. Everybody knows that. Everybody, I think, agrees with that. But there's only so much interest in how that happens from this point of view, even. How it happens at all, let alone from this point of view. See what I'm saying? So, ignore the physics at your own risk, because a lot of people out there know Cornu, and Cornu will lead them into MMP as well. Insistence on ignorance. Is that alliteration where two words begin with I? An insistence on ignorance works good in pretense in the court, perhaps. But when it really comes to having the confidence you want as a Pilates instructor, Number two, Pilates pursues symmetry. Pilates pursues symmetry. My shelves are all packed up for travel, so use your imagination. There you go. 3 words. 3 words. Use your imagination. Such a good 3-word, what do you call them? They'll come to me later. Here, I can point to it, right over my shoulder, right? Insofar as what am I pointing at here? Well, I'm pointing to the Cornu graphic that points to the nature of a nautilus shell in the way it unfolds, and the way a human being goes into getting control by counteracting or interacting with that natural evolution with some involution of its own, that is the grip at the hips. Why symmetry? So again, use your imagination. There are some shells that grow and spiral out in one direction. They expand along an axis, not symmetrically, but in one way. Right? That's why the nautilus shell is a symbol of symmetry, because it grows along its axis and stays symmetrical in its expression of form. Isn't it? Right? Why is symmetry so important? Because it gives you so much more options in moving from here to there than if you're not symmetrical. The body comes out of the physics in which it exists, struggling to survive in the physics in which it exists, and moving according to what I would consider the laws of physics, I mean, being a human being, this is where it gets tricky for me, because being a human being doesn't eclipse the physics that it exists within. There you go. And yet in some ways, through observing, leaves a large part of that mystery and, what was my other word? Surreal. It contains the surreal and the sublime. Even though human beings exist within the physics we find ourselves in, right? In the participating of our capabilities in being, thinking, and observing, we're connected to or focused on the very heart of what the physics we see revealing to us. Too much. A Pilates instructor really just cares about the distinction between body, mind, and spirit and knows how to coordinate them as a state of being in the body in the moment of the doing. That's MMP for you. And in pursuit of the physics of it, there's so much to say. The width of your hips, how wide you are in your hips, determines how stable you are in your body insofar as the grip that you have is the basis for stability throughout the rest of the body. And within MMP acknowledges that that grip is only one of other grips that interact with each other in dynamic ways to stabilize and to facilitate movement. One of those ways the body interacts, from my point of view, is through core new tension, and that's this part of the presentation, right? Number 4, the first thing from MM to deliver to your audience to help explain is that in the MMP point of view, the biomechanics of core new tension are a given. That's why, as a presenter, when you're taking someone up to another point of view, just to explain it, and come back, regardless of how it's taken or what it is, but just to explain it. The fourth thing is MMP, which is going from, is it an insistence on ignorance? Not to acknowledge that the hips have a rotational dynamic and that the knees and the metatarsals and the ankles and the shoulders and the ears, I said those out of order a little bit, but those 6, at least within the MMP point of view, identifies core new tension or core new endpoints of tension. There, I said that better, right? Follow me? These are the endpoints. Here's an axis. It lines up like this. It's hard to do on camera. But right here now, that is an endpoint of tension. And it's the oppositional rotation around the axis that endpoint defines, or that endpoint is defined by the rotation of the axis. No axis, no endpoint. When you make rotation, you define the axis. When you make an involution of grip, when you make grip, that's what it takes to get closer to the axis to have more control. We've demonstrated this in prior classes. Between a 6-inch styrofoam roller and a 1-inch wooden bar to a way too thin, maybe metal pole that, where is your grip best? In MMP, developing your core is about establishing a grip and then being able to have it be dynamic, to be able to flow in and out of it in degree. So here's a tape measure, right? And what pulls it, when I let go, what pulls it back in? In here there's a spring, right? That's the musculature, imagination. Or use your imagination to engage your musculature, ideally in making that grip, because it does anyway. And the more you recognize the physics of what's going on, I think the more articulate you get with your grip faster. And as a Pilates instructor, what you want to be is efficient. You know how everybody gets there eventually, right? Maybe, maybe not. But everybody's headed to the same place, I believe, in the experience that you get from the interaction with the choreography. So that takes me back to number one. What else have you got? See, that's what kills me. Not kills me, but I guess it's because it's just so out here that there's only a few outliners. But at some point, when this pressure builds up in this tsunami of Pilates passion, MMP is a buoy because it's an ideal, and from that ideal, you use it for whatever other perspective you entertain. See? This is it by far and away. This is not the only point of view. Very small slice, but in that slice, it's crystal clear and perceptible. And because Joseph Pilates was a survivor in his Methodist survival training, and that is the inspiration for his method. I had something really eloquent figured out there, pointing about survival as the issue. And it's a physical world, and there are ideals within Joe's choreography that are apparent. That's why But even though there is the surreal and the sublime in terms of, Pilates' physics doesn't lock it all off into the magical world of the experience that it is because of observing. But that doesn't mean that Pilates in the MMP point of view is subjective, and that it's art and dance and improv, and that there is no expression that is better than another other than what a human being makes of it, right? A collectivist point of view. And just the fact of the matter is, Joseph Pilates is a human being that made a gift to humanity. And that gift is directly to each individual human. There will always be groups with a point of view. But and whether I'm a group or not, the MMP point of view is that there's an experience involved, And that makes it about you and your experience of it. And that's very egalitarian. You know, there's no permission and there's no judgment, because ultimately you discover what's going on, and then you're diving all alone, right? And then you're helping others dive, right? It's up to you. It's about survival, and hopefully that point of view is pretty clear that you've been listening to. Or not, historically, as the case may be. But I'm aiming for the year 4040, and some sense for you then that I recognize now what I'm pointing to. In many ways, I think, like Joe knew what he was pointing to. See, and you could say that core new tension is Pilates, and that's fine. To say it's a technique that you use to do something else, I think, is a diminution of the significance of the biomechanical existency of the interaction. In any regard, Joe's method is about the experience. Being able to imagine and then make happen core new tension is biomechanical. It's just a means to get the developing the body uniformly part in Joe's method. Okay? That's how it fits in my mind. And insofar as there is no documentation of core new tension in the body out there, at least none that I'm aware of, I've been sharing this for a long time now, and my hope would be that science gets applied to it. But you know, science didn't get applied to Joe's work either. And I think Joe is discouraged by that and disheartened. And from his expectation, I find not to have one there, because I don't know who I'm talking to. You now in 2019 live for me, or you in 4040, and I'm just a wisp of tape you fell upon, or video. You know, that's what I mean by tape. So I wish someone a happy birthday today. And in their response, it was a pivotal response for the reflection that I was in. And yet just the reality of the response was what it was. That's what I think that old saying means by the smile that you send out returns to you. Definitely Asian, but I don't know from where. All right. Thanks for listening. One more recording in a chain, and 979 days since this enterprise began. When you catch up to it, I hope you find it reinforcing in your confidence as a Pilates instructor. Knowing who you are, what you're about, what your target is, and how to hit it. You know all that, right? Of course, of course. Life can't live forever. That's why I'm doing this now instead of in 40/40. Read between the lines and see behind the curtain. Evaluate points of view. And I know what you know, right? Know what you know. And ask for a lot. I do. And it doesn't mean I make a lot, but it conveys a sense of value that then sends out that smile that come back to you. Then add 2 and 2 or not. But giving it away isn't as much fun as what Peckinpah would say. What would he say about under your own roof? Obscure director, but earning the roof over your head kind of thing. When it comes to Pilates, don't be afraid to add 2 and 2 more. And director thinking, I want to say after that, acquiesce to what you can't control. That whole quote about let me know the difference between what I can control and what I can't control, and the difference between those, and stand within. I mean, direct your thinking, but acquiesce to the minor part we all play. Major to us. And relatively to that, minor to everyone else. Right? So direct your thinking with an acceptance of within acceptance. Maybe there's no of to that. Within acceptance. That's it. Direct your thinking within acceptance. So, Geist.